Hey everyone, it's Mr. Oda. In today's topic, we're going to be talking about topic 3.8, human population dynamics. So our learning objective for this topic is going to be to explain how human populations experience growth and decline. Humans are just like any other living organism on the planet. They are affected by the same factors, plus additional human factors. And for our skill, we're going to be able to describe environmental problems. Now, as I said, human population is just like any other population on Earth. It has a carrying capacity, and this is defined in Malthusian theory. All that means is that every living thing on the planet has a limit, and humans are affected by the same factors that animals and plants are: density dependent and independent factors. And if you remember those from our previous topics, density independent affects a population whether it is large or small. So storms, fires, heat waves, and droughts will affect a population whether you're in a big city or in a small town. Whereas density dependent factors, they affect a population more if it's larger. So for example, disease such as COVID-19, it will travel and spread faster in a population that's large, and it'll negatively impact it more. Same thing with land and food availability. The more people there are, the more that stuff is valuable and it'll be used up more. Same thing with access to clean water and air. You might not be able to access this stuff if the area is too overpopulated. Now, the thing that's different between us and other organisms is that we have societal factors. So in society, we have things that affect how our population grows and declines, and these things are stuff like birth rates, death rates, education, infant mortality, the age of marriage, and nutrition. And we're going to talk about those very briefly. So, birth rate is, as it says, how many babies are born in the country. Now, a high rate of birth means that there are going to be more people added to the population, which means that the population is going to grow quicker. Fairly simple to understand. And if there's a low rate of birth, the population growth is going to be slower. Similarly, death rates are how many people die per year. If you have a high death rate, if you have a lot of people dying, your population growth is going to be lower. If there's not as many people dying, your population growth will actually increase. And now these two factors are very prominent when it comes to the differences between developed countries like the United States and other countries that are less developed or still developing. Countries that are still developing might have less access to healthcare, medicine, and other resources like food, so they're going to have higher rates of death. On the same note, infant mortality rate is when children die before the age of 5. And again, with a lack of resources and medical care, countries that are developing will have a higher rate of death, which might slow down their population growth. Whereas a country that is more developed and has a low rate of death, their population growth is going to be increased. Nutrition is incredibly important as well for these countries. If people in the country have access to proper nutrition, they will not die as often. So high rate or lots of access to food means that the population is going to go up. If there's a lack of food, the population growth is going to be slow or even decline. Now, one of the most important factors in this list is actually the education of women. And this means how commonly women go to school or to higher education. And so when women are given more educational opportunities, population growth actually slows down. And this is because the women will hold off on marriage and bearing children because they're going to school, they're going into the workforce. And if women do not have as many educational opportunities, such as countries where maybe women are not given as many rights, they will speed up the population growth. And this is mostly because they're expected to marry and have kids very early. And on that note, the last one is the age of marriage. If women have an early age of marriage, if they're expected to marry early, it's going to speed up population growth because they're going to have kids early as well. However, if they have a late age of marriage, it's going to slow down the population growth. Again, this is often related to the development of the country and other societal factors, for example, religion. Now, a couple multiple choice practice problems. Which of the following would be considered a density dependent factor affecting human populations? And then for question 2, which of the following would be a reason that less developed countries are expected to add 2 billion people to the global populations, while more developed countries are only expected to add 100 million over the next 50 years? Hope you guys were able to get that. Now, to bring this back to some other topics that we've talked about, we're going to look at this graph that shows education versus total fertility rate. Based on what you've learned, examine the graph and explain the trend that you see. What is the relationship between years of schooling and total fertility rate? And why do you think this happens? Hope you guys were able to see that there is a negative relationship between these two variables. And finally, we're going to look at some demographic data for the country of Haiti. For one, identify and discuss one factor in a less developed country that could contribute significantly to a change in life expectancy, similar to what occurred in Haiti from 1995 to 2015. The life expectancy in 1995 was 55 years, and in 2015, it was at 64. And finally, 2, identify and discuss one economic or cultural factor in a less developed country that could contribute significantly to a change in the fertility rate, similar to what occurred in Haiti from 1995 to 2015. In 1995, the fertility rate was 5.2, and in 2015, the fertility rate was at a 2.7. Now, the takeaways from this unit should be that human populations are affected by the same factors that animals and plants are, environmental factors, as well as societal factors. And less developed countries, or countries that are still developing, are very different from more developed countries in their birth and death rates, as well as their educational opportunities, access to healthcare, and other resources. I hope you guys were able to get a lot of information from this, and I'll see you guys in the next lesson.